Hello, and welcome to the Privacy Policy and Consent Refresher. My name is Paul Schmitz, and I am the Manager of Information Services here at All Chicago. I'm going to ask that due to the legality of what's going to be presented here, that any questions you have be submitted through the help desk. All Chicago will then be able to review all these questions to make sure they're answered as accurately as possible. I don't want to give you guys any wrong information on something that could kind of go either way. So I feel it's best if you submit the question, we can kind of review it as a team if it's not something too difficult. And then we'll take those questions and we'll place them all in the article that's going to be created for this webinar. So it'll have the help desk will have the list of questions that you guys submit through the help desk, as well as the answers, as well as this webinar. Today, we'll be covering some terminology as well as the HMIS privacy policy, client consent form, and the one-page privacy posting, as well as some of the help desk resources available to help answer any questions. So let's talk about some important concepts. Personally identifiable information, or PII, is information that identifies either directly or indirectly a specific individual. This includes name, address, social security number, or any other identifying number or code, telephone number, etc. It's information that can be manipulated by a reasonably foreseeable method to identify a specific individual, or information that can be linked with other available information to identify a specific individual. So one example of this would be information that can be used to Google someone and then as a result identify a specific individual. The Agency Participation Agreement, the APA, is an agreement between All Chicago and any agencies looking to enter data into HMIS. It highlights the responsibilities of each party. The APA asks agencies that their users adhere to a code of ethics to respect a client's data and their choices regarding how to share their data. It asks that the agency explain the purpose of the HMIS and the terms of consent and protect their client's data. Every agency is required to complete an APA before gaining access to HMIS. Another term, a couple terms here. The HMIS Collaborative is comprised of the HMIS lead, in this case, All Chicago, and any agency that has signed the APA. This is a group of stakeholders that coordinate their efforts to end homelessness in the city of Chicago. Participating agencies are agencies that have HMIS access and have signed our APA. In order to receive HMIS access, your agency must have signed the APA. The Data Sharing Agreement, the DSA. So the DSA is essentially a document that allows outside entities to use HMIS data for research purposes. Along with research, it can also be signed for internal COC use, such as with coordinated entry, in which multiple agencies may need to share data in order to provide effective transition and care. Here's a small visual to differentiate the APA versus the DSA. So the APA is used with the HMIS Collaborative, while the DSA, for the most part, involves outside entities. So you can kind of see in this diagram, encircled is the HMIS Collaborative ecosystem that is joined with the APA, and then outside of that would be where the DSA is used. Use versus disclosure of data. So use of data is essentially using the data that a client provided within your own agency. Information is not shared outside of the agency with other than with the HMIS lead. Disclosure means releasing that information, sharing, transferring to agencies outside your agency. This is what allows coordinated entry to function. So here's a chart that may help in visualizing the difference. You can see in the right that use is shaded in a circle, implying use within an agency and the HMIS lead. An example of this would be a locked client profile. Only users at that particular agency would be able to view that client's information. On the left, disclosure is not enclosed by a circle. implying its openness with disclosing information to other agencies outside the participating agency. An example of this would be an unlocked file. In this case, the client is searchable by all participating agencies and their information is available upon search. Okay, now that we've covered some of the terminology, let's dive into the documentation. So privacy policy and client consent. There are three relevant documents to your client's privacy and their data sharing. So we have the privacy policy notice. This is a 7-page document that should be available to your client for them to read through at their request. The client consent form, this provides your client with a choice on how they can share their data. It has several sections, including a supplemental form for sharing disability status. And finally, the one-page posting. A one-page summary of the privacy policy notice that should be posted where client intake occurs, as well as any common areas where clients may be able to clearly view it. So let's discuss and review the privacy policy. The privacy policy is a way to comply with federal, state, local, and funder requirements regarding a client's data. It helps standardize data use and disclosure practices. It was designed to give clients the opportunity to do what they want with their information. It also provides the agency with a framework and reason to collect and use a client's information. All users are expected to comply with this policy. It's the document meant to answer questions on how HMIS data is used. It's the umbrella under which usage and disclosure guidelines can be located. Responsibility for this document and its contents lie with the HMIS lead, participating agencies, as well as every user accessing HMIS. The privacy policy applies to all personal information that is collected and maintained in HMIS, including electronic and hard copies derived from HMIS. So if you're printing some of the information that is located inside HMIS and putting it into a client's file, like a file folder, then that is also covered here. The collaborative is collecting information on a client largely to provide the coordinated services amongst the collaborative. It also allows the collaborative to carry out functions related to payment, administrative functions, reporting for funder obligations, data analysis, academic research, and when required by law. This list of bullet points here can give you an overall idea of the intent. Essentially, it allows the collaborative to best serve its clients. Why is a client's information shared? As stated previously, by sharing information, the collaborative is better able to communicate and thus better able to help fulfill the client's needs. It can be shared two ways. So with client consent, personal information may be used or disclosed to provide or coordinate services or for purposes of data integration with other systems and data warehousing. For example, different participating agencies will disclose their information to help locate suitable housing, conduct referrals or assessments, or determine program eligibility in order to find housing for a client. In other words, agencies will collaborate to address this client's specific needs. Without client consent, personal information may be used or disclosed for a number of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is to create reports for the COC that include a client's data. These reports are anonymized, so clients are not identified. These reports are on aggregate data and shared with the appropriate audience. Other reasons are payments, reimbursements for services, such as like a Medicaid reimbursement or things of that nature. Administrative functions, these are things you need to do to find out how many people you served and how. Serious threat to health or safety, or to report about an individual who is believed to be a victim of abuse, neglect, or domestic violence when required by law, and this could be through a court order, warrant, or subpoena. If the disclosure is authorized by statute or regulation to prevent serious harm or for data sharing purposes. Again, this can be for research purposes. It can also be signed for an internal COC use, such as with coordinated entry. Clients' rights. So clients have a right to their information. While we don't give them everything, for example, we don't provide case notes, they do have a right to ask this of the agency. This doesn't mean you have to begin printing this information immediately. You just have to communicate what your agency believes to be a reasonable timeline. You may want to take some time to consult internally about this or with All Chicago for the best way to provide this information. Clients have a right to request information be corrected if they also notice an error or inaccuracy. And they also have a right to request a list of participating agencies, a copy of the privacy policy, and of course to revoke sharing at any time. Let's talk about the client consent form. The client consent form should be completed for every client entering your project. Any person in the household over the age of 18 must sign their own client consent form. So, for example, you may have a parent with children, and one child may be 18. While the parent considers them a dependent, that individual must sign their own client consent form as they are 18 or older. So that's the rule, 18 or older. The client consent for data sharing has two parts. So part one will serve as an FAQ for clients to inform their data sharing choice, whereas part two asks the client to actually make their data sharing decision. There's a third section that's the supplemental form, and we'll be addressing that a little later. So information in the client consent form is split into two types. Basic information, which includes demographics, partial service history, essentially who the client is. It can contain enrollment information, a RIN number, a PII about dependents. There's a list for the client to review under part two. The coordination of care and housing information section that covers a client's experience with homelessness and current living situation. It covers their income, disabilities, current services, and medical insurance. So a broader definition of these two sections may be that basic information tells us who the client is, while a coordination of care and housing information tells us what the client may be eligible for. Clients are presented with three options. Two of these allow the client to be matched to housing. So options A and B give participating agencies and the HMIS collaborative the opportunity to share information with another agency that may be better suited to the client's need, whether it be housing or services. Option A allows agencies in the HMIS collaborative to view the client's record. The client's record is unlocked. Any agency can search for the client and see a partial history of their services and some demographics. Option B will that'll lock the record, and only agencies providing services to that client are able to view the record. If this client is matched to housing by another agency, the client record is opened up to the potential agency. If housing cannot be provided, the record is locked again, only viewable to the agencies providing services. So this option restricts the amount of views to only those with possible assistance. This generally can be done by All Chicago. You can just submit a ticket through the help desk and we'll lock it and unlock it. But oftentimes someone on the matching team can do this as well. The third option for data sharing. So C, that is, does not agree to share any information. Only the agency providing services can view the record, and All Chicago. By choosing C, the client is stating that they do not want to provide their information to other housing providers. If a client chooses C, they will not be matched to housing. So this is something to keep in mind when you're discussing these three options with the client. Oftentimes it's going to be in their best interest not to choose C, but again, it is their prerogative. So any dependents in the household must be listed on the final page of the client consent form. Any adult children or non-head of household adults must complete their own consent form. The head of household can have their data sharing choice different from that of their dependents. For example, a parent may want to participate in coordinate entry and they choose option A. However, they may not want to share their children's information and elect to choose option C for their dependents. This won't have any bearing on the client's entry into the coordinated entry system. Finally, with this, all agencies must have their client sign and date the form, as well as have a witness from the agency sign. This can be an intake worker or case manager, but they have to sign and date the form. So 2 important notes here. Any agencies with clients that remain in the program over a year should ask their client at their annual assessment if they want to update their current data sharing choice. We want to make sure that we're keeping current with all that information in HMIS. Also, as the relationship between the case manager and the client changes and grows, that client may eventually decide to change their data sharing selection. If, for example, the client chooses C initially, but has grown to trust their case manager and the system, they may want to change to option A or B. In that instance, the client can update their data sharing selection by resubmitting their client consent form. The new client consent form, that will take precedence over any of the previous ones. So please keep in mind that this can go both ways. If a client decides they don't want to share their information anymore and they choose option C, that will then override any of the pre-existing ones. The supplemental disability data and health information form, this is connected to the client consent, and it's the last part of the document. This allows sharing for health and disability information. This document only has to be completed by the adults in the household. Non-adult dependents do not need to complete this form. The only the head of household would be completing this, which is, of course, has to be an adult over the age of 18. So what if a client refuses to sign? So we get this question here at All Chicago, and I'm sure you guys hear this as well. If a client refuses to sign or doesn't want to do anything with this form, we'd like you to treat it as the client selecting option C. So what you'd want to do is fill out the client consent form. On the form itself, mark that the client refused to sign, and then have the witness sign it. And then you're going to want to place this in their record, right? So you want to make sure that all of this information, you don't want to just leave it missing from the client record. You want to make sure that the data that you have on file matches what you have in HMIS. So in HMIS, you would then select that the client selected C. You can put a note in saying that the client refused. So let's talk a little bit about the privacy posting. So this is what the one-page posting looks like. At the end of this, we'll kind of go over the help desk and take a look at where some of these are located and talk a little bit more about that. So the one-page privacy posting, it's essentially a summary of the client's rights and the privacy policy. So its intent is to provide clients with a better idea of why we're collecting their information. We just tried to summarize it and keep it short onto one page so clients can kind of just quickly review it instead of going through all those other pages. So all agencies, this is important, all agencies are required to keep this one-page posting available where clients have clear and easy access to review it. So this can be at your intake desk. It can be in common areas, cafeterias, but it has to be a place where it's clearly visible. Let's go over some of those help desk resources. So the help desk has all the information we kind of talked about available by just with a few clicks. Here, you can not only find the documentation that we kind of talked about, but we also have some documentation in Spanish and some in Polish. we have all three of the documents that we talked about in Spanish, and it's available on our help desk. We also have just the client consent form that's in Polish. So let's take a look at what some of these look like in the help desk. So you can see here that we do have a little bit more information on client consent and the ROI listed here. We also have a downloadable version at the end for the most part of almost every article. So if you need a copy of the client consent form and the supplemental, you can download it here. You just go ahead and click it and it'll go ahead and download. And then you can go ahead and print it or place it wherever's convenient for you. So you can also see here is on the left the privacy policy notice. So you can see here. And we at the help desk, we tend to we do our best to kind of make sure that these are updated. So you can also see the last time it was updated was about a month ago, just making sure that we have valid and up-to-date information. And this will go through the entire document here if you want to just look at it. But again, what you'll want to do is print this, policy out. It's down here as a PDF. I don't recommend printing the page. You're going to get all this extra stuff. Just click on here and go ahead and print it. If you have any issues, of course, you can email All Chicago here at hmis@allchicago.org. Here's the privacy one-page posting. So again, this here listed on the help desk, it has a little form in it so that you can go ahead and put your agency's information in it. We ask that you don't print the page, so please feel free to download this, and then you can go ahead and print it and post it wherever you need to post it. And you can see we have 3 versions of the policy in Spanish. So this doesn't go through like the other ones do, where it has all of the available text here. If you'd like to read a copy of it, please feel free to click on the PDF down here in this link, download it, and read it or print it if you need to. We do have that posted for the one page, as you can see here. And then the client consent for data sharing. So these were just finished. As you can see, we have a date here so that we know, if this changes, we're going to have to update it. So this was done at the end of the year last year, so it's completely current. And you can see the first page listed here, along with the link to download it. With that being said, I'm going to thank everybody for attending. This was just a refresher. Of course, if you have questions, please submit them through the help desk. This way it'll help us track the questions a little bit more, and we can make sure that we're giving you very, very detailed and very, very accurate information so that you can go ahead and bring it back to everybody at your agency and that you can have confidence in the answer that you're given. Again, you can these slides are available as handouts as part of this webinar. They will be posted along with this webinar on the help desk, but I'll wait a little bit so that I can see if we can get any of your questions in. You can submit any questions you want to hmis@allchicago.org, or if you go to the actual help desk, and I'll show you right now. So if you go to our help desk page, you will see any of the recent activity you had, any articles that have kind of been looked at a lot. But up in the top right, you can see submit a request. So you can also submit a request here. This is generally more detailed, so it'll actually tell me your agency, your program, a subject, and you can put a description in, though the sending in emails is great too. So please feel free to do either one of those. And we'll let it go for a few days and then go ahead and post this up on Friday. So please feel free to look at this on Friday, but we'll answer your questions via the ticket as well. I just want to make sure that everybody has access to everybody's questions and that everything is actually answered in detail. So again, I want to thank everybody for attending. If you have any comments as well as to how we can improve some of our trainings, again, please feel free to send that in through the help desk.